So yes, normally I do review these Age of the primes in threes or even twos, but this time I thought this one was a little bit special. When Age of the Primes was announced and figures started finally coming out, I don't think we ever realized just how unique the different primes were going to be. Each one is a new mold, and I think, genuinely, some of the best Transformers we've gotten in modern times. But even though we've been getting all of that, I still wasn't prepared for how good this guy would be. Welcome one and all to the display case. I'm Nate, and today we're looking at Transformers Age of the Primes, one of the 13, Amalgamus Prime. The box is pretty standard when it comes to Age of the Primes. You have the branding, the naming, the tag, as well as some really nice key artwork of Amalgamus in both his robot and, you know what, I'm not entirely sure what to call this. I'm going to go with a walker mode. That sounds about right. Just like the rest of the primes, the white writing usually on Age of the Prime boxes is now gold. On the left side of the box, we have that same key art now blown up of Amalgamus holding his T-Cog, showing us, I guess. And on the left side of the box, we have that same mural we've been getting with the rest of the Age of the Primes boxes of the 13 primes, and this one shows the spot where Amalgamus is, which makes sense. The back of the box has renders of Amalgamus in both his robot and walker modes, as well as a little call out as to the other modes that you can put him into, of which we'll definitely go into later. There's also this little badge at the top that has Amalgamus Prime's Prime Artifact, and there's a little bit of Cybertronian writing on there that translates to the Cog of Transformation. Real quick, I'm actually really happy to see clear plastic packaging for Hasbro's accessories once again. It's nice to see what's in the bag. I gotta admit, I was not expecting Amalgamus to be this good. Based on his design blockiness, I would say that his design is primarily based on his appearance in Transformers 1, just based on all those yellow gold highlights, while still going after that aligned continuity look that I think they could not have achieved even if they tried. And for a 5mm peg parts former, this guy feels actually quite good in hand. He's got a couple of accessories that he can hold, which we'll get into later, but interestingly enough, he doesn't have those little 5mm holes in his hands. They're just perfectly straight, but can hold the 5mm pegs anyway. He's also held together mainly with 5mm ports and pegs, and these all held pretty nicely when I was handling him. I think some of them could be a little bit tighter than others, but his head is definitely one that comes off the most often. In fact, way too often. The peg that goes into that port is just way too shallow, and I really wish it was a deeper connection. There's also a little bit of gappage, but it's not bothering me too much. Amalgamus comes with a couple of accessories. Firstly, his Energon Scythe. Now this comes in 3 pieces out of the box. The main piece, this back piece that sort of doubles as a blaster for Amalgamus. It has a 5mm port on the back and tabs into the back of the scythe quite nicely, allowing you to sort of have it as a scythe slash a blaster or a cannon. This serrated Energon orange edge of the scythe is also pretty cool, but what's also awesome is this end piece here. I don't think it's been explicitly confirmed, but I think this is supposed to be a version of Amalgamus's T-Cog, or an extension of it at least. Either way, it's a beautiful translucent orange, and it plugs in nicely to the end of the scythe, amounting to a really nice package overall. And because of all the 5mm ports on Amalgamus's side and back, there are plenty of places to put this scythe as an option for really good accessory storage, especially when you collapse it down. And because the back of the scythe has that little 3mm peg on it, you can also attach a blast effect to it. And you can say that this is like a blaster shooting out a bolt of energy, but I love to see the versatility in saying that it could be a rocket booster at the end of Amalgamus's scythe. Another thing that comes separate are these 2 sort of drone hub turbine things that plug into his shoulders. Or really anywhere else with a 5mm port. It's got one on each side and on the back, allowing for some great versatility in posing and in the transformation. But arguably, Amalgamus's most unique accessory is actually stored in his head out of the box. You lift up that back panel and you can see Amalgamus's T-Cog, the original T-Cog of all Transformers. You can actually use the 3mm nub on the back of the scythe to grab it for a closer look. Its design's based on the T-Cog design from Transformers Prime, and it's molded in the same translucent orange plastic as the rest of his accessories. And just like the other Prime artifacts, this one has Amalgamus's symbol stamped onto it. The only thing that's a little bit unfortunate is that it actually makes up Amalgamus's pupil, so if you take it out, he kinda looks a little bit lifeless, which makes you want to take it out even less. But it is really cool because you put a little bit of light behind it and it has amazing light piping capabilities. I also could have sworn that Amalgamus was a little bit bigger. Comparing him to the rest of the Primes, he is a Voyager, but he stands significantly shorter than the other three we've gotten in Prima Prime, Alpha Trion, and Vector Prime. I know that he definitely has probably a similar parts count to those characters, and by that means probably the same amount of plastic overall. But I can't stop thinking that he would have been a lot cooler if he was, say, the same size as Prima Prime. You can actually extend his torso up by using the articulation and sort of angling it upwards, making him a little bit taller, but it does eventuate in this massive gap in his front torso that's pretty unsightly, so I don't think I'll be keeping him like that, just for a little bit of height. Something I really like about Amalgamus though is his versatility as a figure. This guy has so much flexibility in how you can display him. You can either have him essentially humanoid with arms down to the side, which is pretty vanilla, or you can have them all splayed out and more Amalgamus-like, I guess. Or, because all of the arms and even the legs are on 5mm ports, you can take them off and put them on in whichever way you so please, allowing for some really creative and unique ways of how Amalgamus can present himself, given he's the patron prime of change. Or maybe just a monstrosity that you never want to look at or think of ever again. Because of this versatility though, Amalgamus actually has a really good range of articulation. His head is on a 5mm peg, so it can look left and right all the way around, and the part it's on can help it look up and down. His arms are on rotating joints that move up and down, and they're sort of two parts of one joint, with the top arm taking up half the joint and the bottom arm taking the other half. Both arms have a bicep swivel as a mushroom peg on the upper part of the arm, as well as at that 5mm port and peg combo on the lower half of the bicep. On top of that, there's a hinge at the elbow that can go in 90 degrees, as well as fully rotating wrists. Surprisingly, there's also inwards and outwards movement on the wrists. He also has a waist that can rotate 360 degrees, as well as rotate up from the back that reveals that massive gap that we spoke about earlier, as well as down a tiny bit. He's also got hips that move forwards, backwards, and sideways. And unfortunately, zero thigh swivel at all. It's just one solid piece, which is kind of disappointing. But the bottom half of the knee is on a 5mm peg, so it can rotate all the way around. He also has those double jointed canine knees that can move backwards and forwards at both joints. And just to cap it all off, his foot can rotate inwards 90 degrees. On top of all this, he also has a small 3mm port on his backside that you can plug a display stand into. I use a Tamashii Act 4 stand, and this allows you to get him up into the air and doing some really cool aerial poses. So the posability of Amalgamus here isn't anything to dismiss. He can hit almost any pose you want him to. But I think where he falls down is the lack of those fine-tuning options. He has no opening or closing hands, which is standard for most of the primes, especially the Voyagers, and the lack of a thigh swivel really throws me off. I think he would have been perfect if he just had those two things. But even then, I think he's still well-rounded enough that he can be an excellent posing figure with the rest of the options that you have available. His feet are large and heavy, allowing for really good stability. His head, while not on a ball joint, still feels expressive enough that you can get a good range of emotion out of it. And his versatility, which we talked about previously, doesn't stop at his robot mode. You can be just as creative with this guy in all his other forms. Amalgamus's walker mode is a little bit plain, at first glance anyway. It kinda just looks like you folded the feet up and you folded in the main body, and now the arms and the hands have just become the legs. But you plug in those little drone booster things to the sides, and then taking the scythe and collapsing the top in to make sort of like a gun turret barrel, before then plugging it into the 5mm port on top of the tank by separating the legs and just putting it in between. And you have something a little bit more interesting. And yeah, I think it lends a little bit to the imagination. You kind of have to picture what it's doing to make it work. But I think that's exactly where Amalgamus Prime excels in general. It caters to your imagination. And true to the form of Amalgamus, it can be whatever you want it to be. Plug a display stand into that 3mm port at the back of him next to those rocket thrusters, and he can be a spacefaring rocket lunar lander type thing if you want him to be, with those hands now forming landing gear instead of crab crawling arms. It also boosts him up in scale when you compare him to the alternate modes of the other primes. I'm also just now realizing as well that I'm really digging the different color palette that Amalgamus has compared to the rest of the primes. Of course though, being Amalgamus Prime, this walking tank mode isn't the only thing that he can turn into. After all, he does come apart with 5mm ports. If you pull off what used to be his arms as well as his legs from the top, not to mention those two droney rocket things, and then take his two main arms and fold up the elbows to form like windows, and then connect the two ends together, you get a sci-fi train. You can also take those same two arm pieces and plug them into one of those droney rocket booster things, and you kind of get a drone/submarine. You can do the same thing with the other two arms with the wings by folding out the wings themselves and then connecting them together to form a little mini shuttle. You can even take the scythe, collapse it down again, and put it between the two legs, clipping them together, and then adding the shuttle from before, as well as Amalgamus's two main arms, to make sort of like a recon drone tank situation. So you see where I'm going with this. Each piece can connect with other pieces to make something greater, to cater to your imagination and create whatever you want Amalgamus to turn into, since that was his entire shtick. Everything I've shown you here is just from the instructions, so if you experiment a bit, you can find some cool stuff. For instance, I fooled around with him a little bit and came up with this really cool spaceship mode. You can plug blast effects into the back and everything and simulate him flying through the stars. Or even experiment with ground-based alternate modes. I came up with this, I guess, enhanced walker mode, sort of like an AT-ST from Star Wars. And I thought that looked cool as well. What I love about Amalgamus is that each piece can be an infinite number of things based on your imagination. And it's really good because when you put it together, it feels like it was meant to be that way. Overall, I think that Amalgamus is genuinely one of the best Transformers I've ever had, especially when it comes to sci-fi vehicles. He's really interactive, his joints are all stiff and feel really good in hand, and he comes with some incredible accessories. He doesn't turn into a truck, but he stimulates your imagination more than a truck ever would, and most importantly, he stands out. He looks different from the other primes, and in a great way. He's just such a unique character and a unique figure. And I think, honestly, absolutely 100% worthy of a pickup. You should definitely get this guy as soon as you can. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this one, feel free to check out my channel where I've got more just like it. Feel free to subscribe, leave a like, or even a comment with your own thoughts on Amalgamus Prime. I really look forward to reading them. Thank you again, and we'll catch up soon.